and either text JJ Valdez to 733 to 22333, or go ahead and just jump on the web to polev.com, and you'll input JJ Valdez 733 at that first space, and then the next space it asks for a name. And we'll be able to get some interactive and some information from you guys participating with this lecture. So we'll be able to do a little bit of multitasking here, so you get some real-time feedback based off of your information. Come on, my friend, you're not the only one anymore. There's a pen and paper here for just a moment. Well, typically they do a introduction and a bio, but I think we're just ready to rock and roll. What do you say? I'll just let you know, my name is JJ Valdez. I am the Director of Clinical Education in Victoria, Texas. I am just coming up on 1 year of doing this. It has been a lot of fun. I've been able to see the growth of students. Something that I really want to do is help them see the potential that they have. So getting into this position, I've been able to do something like that. Before that, I've kind of traveled all over the place. If you want to kind of see what the travel life is, I've done it. We can talk. We'll figure out what that looks like, or if that's possible for you. I've been a hospital educator. I've been a mid-manager. I've kind of done a little bit of everything. So kind of I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things. So if you want to share some ideas and break some stuff down, I'm happy to share with you guys. Happy to have a good time with you guys whenever we get to this opportunity. So if you haven't already done it, go ahead and either text JJ Valdez 733 to that number there, 2333, and it'll bring you up to the website or the web browser for the website for Poll Everywhere. The first step there is to go ahead and put in JJ Valdez 733 into that, and then you can use your own little username from there, because some of the slides that we have are going to populate y'all's answers. So it is real-time feedback based off of what you guys are responding with. So it's interactive. We're going to have a chat. I don't want to be up here just blah, blah, blah to you guys. I want us to have a conversation, all right? Yeah. Okay. I know it's the last one of the day, guys, but let's have fun with it, all right? So the very first question that we have is, what are the current QI projects that you guys are seeing or using? Decreased ventilator days? None? All right. That's a start. Any other QI projects that we have? Go ahead and text that into this current question so that we can see what the potential is there. Finals are QI projects? Yeah? Yeah? What is a QI project? We'll get into that here in just a minute, but I want you to start thinking about what a QI project might be, okay? And QI stands for quality improvement. Quality improvement. Central supply, streamlined ventilators. What's the art part? RT? Okay, so autocorrect to art, okay? So there's a number of different things that we can look at for quality improvement projects. And we're going to talk about those today. We're going to try to figure out what we can do to further build quality improvement projects, how they're beneficial, where we can utilize them, and what we're going to do. So the overall title of this is Learn, Unlearn, Relearn. How many students do I have? Okay. There's information that you're learning right now in school that will be very different 5 years from now. Who's got more than 10 years of experience? Right? Who's got more than 15? Who's got more than 20? Imagine if we did respiratory therapy the way we did it 20 years ago. No computers, right? We're going to be saying the same thing 20 years from now. Imagine if we were doing respiratory therapy the same way we did it back in 2023. There's going to be improvement. There's going to be updates. There's going to be changes that happen all the time. There's things you are learning right now that will be abolished. We won't be doing that anymore 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And what QIA projects help us do is identify areas that we can improve or make changes in. Does that make sense? So we're learning something right now. We'll have to unlearn that, right? And then we'll have to learn something completely different. Okay? I was one that would not try to unlearn something. When I took my boards, the ideal tidal volume was 8 to 12 mLs per kilo, right? Before that, there was a 12 to 15 at one point too, right? Imagine if we used 12 to 15 mLs per kilo right now. Yeah, I saw your face. Right? We're using half of that. We're using half of that, right? So I was one that dug my heels in and said, absolutely not. I went to board exams, and I passed my board exams that said I'm going to use 12 mLs per kilo. But more research came out. More information came out that I wasn't up to date with, right? So I dug my heels in whenever I had attendings and residents and fellows saying, hey, JJ, we're not doing that anymore. I said, my board exam said, right? Anybody ever been that stubborn? Or is that just me? Okay. So the idea is things that we're learning right now are going to change. So what can we do? How can we impact? What can we do to change that? So a quality improvement project is the definition from a textbook. Here we go, textbook definitions, right? The sum of all activities that create a desired change in quality. So all projects, all impacts that will change the quality of what's going on with the care that we provide at the bedside. In the healthcare setting, quality improvement requires a feedback loop that involves the identification of patterns in patient care or the performance of other systems involved in patient care, the analysis of those patterns in order to identify opportunities for improvement in the quality of care for future patients. So what we're doing is looking at patterns. What do we have going on right now? Is there things that we can change so that future patients don't have to suffer or go through the same issues, challenges, or concerns that some of our patients are seeing right now? Does that make sense? Okay? So can you guys think of 2 or 3 patterns that you see right now that could use an update? And the paper, I want you to write those 2 or 3 things down. Okay? So on that paper, write 2 or 3 things down that could use an update that would benefit a patient in the future. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you a minute just to look at that, to think about that, process that, and write it down. It's okay. This isn't going to get turned in, I promise. Okay? Be honest. There are things that you guys see at the bedside that are a pattern that need to be changed. That make sense? So we'll take about 60 seconds to look at that, and we'll then move forward. So our objectives today are going to be to discuss current QI projects, identify how valuable QI projects impact patient care and hospital bottom line and employee engagement. And then we're going to mind map or talk about current QI projects that are out there, and then how we can share that in a collaborative so that we can get information not only in our region down here in the valley, but across the state, maybe in multiple states across the nation. Okay? So we're going to talk about how we can build that up so that we can share our ideas across borders. Okay? So quality improvement, I already went into the definition. I'm getting ahead of myself. I tend to do that. But when we talk about patterns, right, there's a pattern to quality improvement as well. Okay? There's a plan, do, study, act. So that's a cycle. That's a plan, do, study, act. The PDSA is one way that we can approach. It's one way that we can approach quality improvement. You guys remember like the scientific method? When you have a hypothesis and you apply that hypothesis, see the results, and if it was the results that you were looking for, you're like, great. If you don't see the results you're looking for, you come up with another hypothesis or another plan. Am I going back to like my 8th grade roots and showing my nerd a little bit? Okay, I do that. But a plan, a PDSA is a plan. It's a way that we can approach quality improvement projects. So specifically with the plan, what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify what we want to accomplish. We want to figure out what our goal is. From there, we're going to have specific improvements that ensures activities that align with the objectives, that align with the goals. Okay? And then we're going to make predictions from there. So if I want to say, hey, we're going to try to get 15 more people in here, right? I could run down the hallway and say, hey, there's a breakout session, right? Come to that one. That's a plan. The objective is to get more people in here. We'll see if it works or not. Does that make sense? So we make a plan, provide the action, see if those results have the impact that we're looking for, and then we will then act or make changes to that plan. Okay? So plan, do, study, act is one of many different quality improvement processes that are out there. Okay? So who is currently involved with quality improvement projects? Who's currently involved in quality improvement projects? So which disciplines? Who might you see that are a part of a quality improvement project? Doctors, RTs, research, nursing. Directors. Biomed, did I see that? This is so fun. It's like a puzzle because the words get all jumbled up, and then you have to try to figure out how they come together. Supervisors, quality, the VPs, absolutely. Absolutely. So we see that there's a spectrum, a wide variety of clinicians and practitioners that are involved with this. So can I just stay in my little RT bubble if I want to do this? Can I just hang out with my friend that just like sits with me the whole time, right? I have to expand those borders. I have to have conversations across many different spectrums to engage and get more people involved and understand what impact we can truly make when it comes to these quality improvement projects. So I want you guys to take a minute right now and share with your neighbor the 1 or 2 projects that you guys talked about or wrote down just a second ago. So just take a minute. I want you guys to share. You good? All right. What'd you write down? What'd you write down?
Turnaround time for EKGs.
Short rounds for EKGs?
Yeah, meeting the goal, right? Sometimes I think in our place, our kids do the EKGs, but
Sure.
I think the best way to do it is have the nurses do it in the ER.
Absolutely.
Running through barriers in my hospital is when we switched it over, the doctors were complaining about the quality and
Right.
et cetera. So yeah, kick back to us.
Absolutely.
But it's better. We want to meet a 3-minute turnaround time. And most places, the nurses do the EKGs in the ER.
Right.
So that's one of the.
So one of the things that you can do with that, if there was like nursing, you wanted to get it back to nursing, is perhaps like every 3 months they have to go through where does the lead placement go? Where does this go? Where does that go? And it's like doing drills, right? There's a system out there. It's called RQI. It's Resuscitation Quality Improvement. And what it does is it has you do compressions on a mannequin so that you're checking off on your compressions every 3 months. So perhaps maybe utilizing a similar format, having nurses or whoever's doing the EKGs every 3 months, like you got 15 seconds to put the stickers on. This patient may have an acute MI, right? So that might be a way that you can improve the performance and the quality of those EKGs, right? Yeah. What else did you put?
Well, I was talking, the other one was not much, but, how do you get, sometimes they have good charges, you got people on lips, Q4,
Sure.
sometimes even Q2, and I say, that shouldn't happen. It should be a win, right?
Absolutely.
So I guess it's protocol, but,
Sure. Sure. So you could look at, like, at discharge, how many patients are being discharged Q4 or more frequent, right? And how many of those started out Q4 and remained Q4 and never got weaned? And then how much patient education is that patient getting to continue these nebs once they get home? That's a good one. That's one of my pet peeves is someone comes in Q4 and leaves Q4. Oh, so you guys are starting to apply some of that collaboration stuff. Starting to apply that collaboration stuff that we just talked about, right? Where you share the idea with your neighbor, right? To talk about ways that you can put into application some of these ideas. Was that a hard thing to do, to talk to your neighbor about what you see that could benefit a patient in the future? It really wasn't, right? When we do this and we have the patient in the middle of our discussions, it makes the discussion so much easier. It's not my ego, it's not my personality getting in the way of, we need this better. We need this better for the patient. Does that make sense? So it makes it a whole lot easier for us to have those conversations when we keep the patient in the middle. Does that make sense? Okay. So how many of us are really good at self-evaluation? 100%. Like one person. Okay? So I'm not going to single them out, but were you really good at self-evaluation from the beginning? No. Right? These are things that you have to improve, you have to work towards, you have to get better at. Right? So what makes us think that when we look at the way we deliver care, the way our policies, our procedures, our protocols that we have at our facility, in our hospital or our university or our school, is the best way to do things, right? We have to then take in perspective or take into account other people's perspective. Does that make sense? So they may say, JJ, you say that makes sense, or does that make sense way too many times whenever you present? I may not see that. I may not see that, right? But if I were to get that feedback from somebody, right, I could then utilize that information to change the way that I present moving forward. It was really hard for me not to say, does that make sense? Okay? But self-evaluation is very, very important. So same thing happens whenever we look at our institution and the way we practice in that institution. Sometimes we need fresh eyes to show us where our blind spots are. There's a bunch of fresh eyes with you students right now. Bunch of fresh eyes that are bringing in a different perspective that us as practitioners may not see, that what we may be blinded to. So you guys have value the first step that you take into that facility, because you're seeing things from a different perspective than somebody that has 15, 20, 25, 30 years of experience. And I want you to know that you have the ability to bring value and impact patient care moving forward. Because the things that you see, the patterns that you see, you can be the person, the one that breaks that chain. You guys can do that for sure. Okay? So a lot of times we need that outside perspective, and a lot of times that can come from a traveler, right? That can come from a student. That can come from somebody that's picking up PRN at a new facility, right? There's impact that can be made. Clinical instructors, right? There's so many different ways that we can bring value. Yeah, you got a question? Oh, I just saw this, and it was like, I wasn't sure if you were going dab or what we were doing here. Yeah.
I mean, all of that is good, but you also need to have that support from administration to make that change, because a lot of people don't like change. Like if something's working, they don't want to do that change. Like I'm gonna say, I'm just giving an example, but like if I'm used to writing in pen and paper, I might not want to use a tablet to write because I don't like that. I'm just saying.
Change is hard.
But you just have to keep going up the ladder in different directions, right? And until you get what you need.
Absolutely. Change is really difficult. And what's crazy is we see in the articles that we read, in the magazines that we read, change every month with all of the different publications. But we're so resistant to it. The question is why? Why are we so resistant to it? Right? And the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, because I've always done it that way. I've always done it that way. That's the most dangerous phrase in the English language, right? Because we've already talked about it a couple of times. If we were to do respiratory therapy the way we did it 20 years ago, running tidal volumes at 12 to 15 mLs per kilo, right? They didn't even have PEEP back then. Okay, before then. Okay? Read a history book. I don't know. Right? But, therapy has changed. But, I was the one that dug my heels in. I don't want you guys to do that. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of these quality improvement projects. Right? And you guys have a ton of them right here, right now, already. Just in the couple of minutes that we have been talking. Right? So, we've talked about collaboration and how we can utilize that already and how beneficial that is, right? One of the things that I've done recently is I reached out to a major level 1 trauma center in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I talked to them about what their QI projects are. So then I can look at other level 1 trauma centers and say, hey, are you guys looking at that? What are your numbers for those things, right? So there's hospitals that are literally across the street from each other, right? That have different practices. But who has the better outcomes when it comes to the patient? Is there something that we can utilize from that facility that will then benefit this other one that we can continue to grow with, right? So evidence-based practice, absolutely. And it's applying that evidence, right? So we've talked about it not very long ago, and we're going to trademark the phrase, instead of evidence-based practice, evidence-empowered practice. That right there encourages change. When you have the ability to empower somebody to utilize the evidence, then they can make big changes. They can have big waves, big splashes, right? I'm thinking about the pool. Um, big splash, right? So when we talk about collaboration, there's a ton of different teams. And we talked about this, interdisciplinary teams. You guys told me that. Nurses, docs, the whole list that you guys gave me. Frontline staff, other facilities, utilizing the schools, right? And the students, right? Students are seeing things from a different perspective. Vendors, absolutely. Absolutely. They're the ones that are a lot of times doing a lot of research right now. So we can utilize them as well, 100%, right? So one of my favorite leadership authors and presenters is John Maxwell. And he has a really good take on perspective. So let's go right into it.
In my book, The 16 Laws of Communication, I have a chapter about collaboration. And basically, the chapter on collaboration is based on the fact that some of my best thinking has been done by others. When we talk about cooperation, that means people are working together, but when we talk about collaboration, it means people are aggressively excited about working together. Collaboration is a whole different level, higher than cooperation. Here's what I know. Whatever you're thinking right now, if you would share that thought with others, it could become a better thought. Whatever you're doing today, if you talk to someone else, they can help that action become more impactful than you just doing it on your own. Everything expands when you collaborate. And it not only gets bigger, but it gets better. And not only does it get bigger and better, it comes quicker. It's so true. Just like many hands make light work, many minds make light work. So I don't know what you're doing today. Don't be a lone ranger. Find somebody, sit down, share, ask questions, get input from them. Trust me. My name's John. I'm your friend. Trust me.
So John is our friend. John is our friend. John Maxwell, phenomenal leadership guy. But he has this take on collaboration. Some of his best thoughts were somebody else's. You take the thoughts of somebody else, right? We had a little conversation about EKG just a second ago. And you bounce that off of somebody and build that to be something bigger. How quick did that change, right? Utilizing collaboration to then grow. You take that from this and start to cross borders. You start to cross borders and you get bigger and a wider ring of influence. Okay? If John Maxwell didn't hit you, some of you guys may know Nipsey. Nipsey is like the Tupac of this generation, right? Poet, author, actor, rapper, R.I.P. Okay? But he had a phenomenal quote with collaboration. He said, if you look at your inner circle, your closest friends, and you're not inspired, you don't have an inner circle. You have a cage. So put yourself around people who will inspire you to do more, to get you to greater heights, to excite you to do more. Okay? Phenomenal leader and author and great quotes there too. Okay? Last year, I'm gonna have to hustle through some of this. Last year at the state conference, we did a leadership workshop. And 48% of the responses in the leadership workshop, when we talked about recruitment and retention, were designed around QI projects. So for encouraging staff to stay, to get them engaged to a facility. Let's say that your EKG proposal gets used and takes off. You're going to have more buy-in at that facility to want to stick around to see that thing continue to go, right? What's the next project that I can then implement that will be better for our facility? So quality improvement can also look at keeping staff in that facility. There's certain hospitals that have, different hospitals have a clinical ladder, right? Are y'all familiar? Have you ever heard of a clinical ladder, right? So the more you're involved with a facility, the more you grow as a respiratory therapist, getting your bachelor's perhaps, getting an additional credential, teaching a CPR class. Things like that will help you grow in the clinical ladder. You grow in the clinical ladder, you get more dollars. You get more dollars, I'm going to stick around, right? Sometimes. But the quality improvement projects have led to showing that there are a resource to keep students or new hires around. There's a fantastic book called Chapterships. And what it does is it talks about utilizing the millennial and zennial workforce to put them on 2-year projects or 18-month projects so that they're invested into like a quality improvement project or some sort of project at that facility so that they can gather information, try to find a solution for the problem, implement that education or that solution, and then get results back from that, right? So that plan, do, study, act. They're seeing that done in about 18 to 24 months, and that keeps that generation of employee at that facility. So some of the feedback from the state conference was, with quality improvements, we're looking at rounding with a purpose. So whenever we do multidisciplinary rounds with the docs in the ICU, nursing, pharmacology, speech, you laugh, Anita, like that's not a thing. Pharmacy, thank you, not pharmacology, right? Pharmacy, physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, all of the different disciplines that we have to then have a purpose with the rounding. But here's a list of some of the QI projects that were listed at the state conference. So my very first presentation that I ever did, it was more of a book report than it was a real presentation. I read this book. It was called Managers 3.0. I was a brand new mid-level manager, and I was trying to figure out how to lead people that were older than me. A lot of the staff that I was leading was older than me, right? So I had to figure out a way that I could, as a younger, upcoming mid-manager, figure out how to relate to an older generation, right? So from that presentation, I found that millennials are very hopeful, tech-savvy, fast-paced, and collaborative. Hello? We're going to talk about collaboration, right? That's something that we tend to like to do. They're very fast-paced. They want to see change and see it right now, right? They're not going to wait for 10 years for that thing to happen. Oh, we're going to get this for you. We're going to start an airway team. You're going to be intubating. It may be 8 years, but am I going to stick around for that? Be real. Not really. That's not the idea. That's not the plan. That's not how millennials typically work, right? So they are ones that tend to move quickly. So those chapterships are very, very beneficial and can help millennials stick around when things are moving. So as we've been here, what are just a couple of the QI projects that you wrote down? Share with the class. Wendy, you got one?
Like bench studies on how to use high flow correctly.
Right. So something like that maybe stems from the lecture that was right before this, right? Right? So are we utilizing high flow nasal cannula or high velocity right? Are we utilizing that on all of the populations that we possibly can? Are we missing our septic patients, right? That could utilize this, right? And finding different benchmarks that we can utilize for these interventions, 100%. Did you write something down? Stop it. What did you write? Oh, documentation. That's a big one. Because if you didn't document it, it never happened. Right? And how much of documentation is missed or doesn't get charted. Or we'll just let the EHR do it itself and then I'll be around sometime. Right? Sure. Right? So documentation is definitely a real thing that we can look at and try to impact how that gets better as well. So I want you guys to think about the ones that you wrote down and figure out a way that you can put a plan together to improve some of the things that you wrote down. That's the next thing, is we don't just start with the idea. Well, we start with the idea. Let me take that back. We start with the idea, but you have to take the next steps. Put a plan together. Imagine in an interview and they say, hey, you have any questions for us? Hey, I went to this crazy guy's lecture, and he was talking about these quality improvement things, and I just noticed that at different places I've been, we could work on X, Y, and Z. What would be your thoughts if I could put a project like that together? You think that director, that manager, that supervisor's jaw is not going to drop? Coming in with a plan to do a quality improvement project? Showing your engagement to that facility? Does that make sense? So start with the idea, put a plan together, and then figure out a way that you can start collecting data so that you can then intervene with an educational opportunity or whatever it may be, and then look at the data afterwards. If it doesn't get better, guess what? You can try again. You can try again. That's that study act part. If it doesn't work in the act, go back to the plan.
At the very least, coming to, while you all are about to start interviewing stuff, coming to your interview and saying, what have you done lately for quality?
Sure.
Show me what you've done lately, what the respiratory department has done lately for quality. Show me where you're headed with this.
And let me give you two. Let me give you two that are stagnant that if that's a quality improvement project, that's like what the kids say, a red flag, right? If they're looking at hand hygiene and if they're looking at scanning, those two things are not about quality improvement. Those two things should have been done with 2 brain cells 20 years ago. If we're still looking at that, we're not improving, we're not progressing, we're not getting any better. So if we're not doing something that's innovative, cutting edge, and looking at something that's going to really impact, we're missing something there. Student involvement. So one of the things that I did whenever I got to Victoria College was our students had quality improvement project. They went to the facility, they'd been going to the facilities for a year, and they had seen some stuff. You guys have seen some stuff, right? Some patterns that probably need to be broken, right? And these are some of the things that they had. So what they had to do then was to present and pitch this to management at those facilities to see if they could run this QI project at that facility. So now the leadership is aware of the patterns you guys are seeing. And they have to get the buy-in of the leadership to then implement QI projects. This is an early mobility project that I was a part of at Midland Memorial. And what we did was we started to every day do sedation vacations, which is not innovative. But what we started to do was bring in physical therapy for range of motion, and then we started walking patients on the vent. Yeah, right? Walking patients on a ventilator. Huh? ECMO. And ECMO and vent patients. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we did this about 10 years ago. I'm still happy about it because it's not like a normal thing. But this is our very first patient that we walked when I was at Midland Memorial. Dr. Kat Lawson is our medical director. ARDS patient had been proned, doing everything that we possibly could. Started with range of motion. Started with weaning that sedation. First day, sit up on the side of the bed. That was our goal. So you have respiratory therapy in the maroon. You have physical therapy here in the hunter green. And then Dr. Kat Lawson. She was giving us some looks that day. Yeah. So first day she stood up, went 6 feet. The second day, stood up, went 60 feet. Again, ARDS, prone, paralyzed, sedated, and we're like, we got to try something else. We got to do something else for this lady. This is her husband here on the right. We taped. So that was our plan to ensure security, extra security. So key people on the side, on the wall, we had the CNO, the Director of Respiratory Care, there to encourage the efforts that we are trying with this patient. Someone who walks away so easily. I'm here to stay and make the difference that I can make. Our differences, they do a lot to teach us how to use the tools and gifts we got there. We got a lot at stake. And in the end, you're still my friend. At least we didn't send for us the work we didn't work. We didn't learn. It's like a number. I don't need for So Maroon's respiratory, remember? That's a manager. That's a manager walking that patient. Day 3, 200 feet. From paralyzed, sedated, prone. Day 3, walking 200 feet. So she ended up extubated and doing just fine. Typically, ARDS patients' mortality rate's somewhere around 50%. It's a coin flip. We woke her up We got physical therapy involved, nursing, CNO, director of RT, managers, all part of this project that was to change a pattern of mortality with ARDS patients. That wasn't the idea of the early mobility program. It was to reduce the number of vent days that we had, but the very first person that it impacted had a 50% chance of living with the diagnosis she was given. So when we did this, our average vent day was about 5 days. We went from about 4.5 up to 5. We initiated the early mobility program late 2013, and you can see the downward trend of the vent days from that initiation. So we decreased it by almost 2 days. Almost 2 days, these patients, on average, were coming off the ventilator that much faster. So the part that the C-suites love to look at, the CFO loves this one, right? Only looking at the ventilator charge, not looking at what it costs for the medications to be on sedation 24/7, to be on pressors, to have the fluids, to have the ICU bed, for any of that. Only the ventilator charge itself. We were able to change per day over $2,500 just in vent charges. When you extrapolate that out over the year, it's almost $1 million worth of change. $1 million worth of change. That right there sings into a CFO's ears. Right? And it started with a quality improvement project to reduce the number of vent days. It was a big project. We had to get a lot of people involved in it. Oh, we had to collaborate with people? Huh? We had to cross those crazy lines to talk to people that we don't usually talk to. Physical therapy, nursing, those scary nurses, right? Doctors, right? We had to do this. But what happened was the hospital won because we're missing at least $1 million of charges per day, right? Our numbers look better because we're reducing vent days by almost 2 days, getting below the national average. Wendy talked about benchmarks. Those are like national averages, right? That's the standard of what things should be, a benchmark. We dropped our vent days below that. And then these are the benefits, right? So employees are more engaged, recruitment, retention, collaboration, value-based QI projects. But who ultimately wins? The patients win. Oh, absolutely. Oh, there's all kinds of hidden gems like that, right? Ultimately, when you have the patient in the center of the conversation with these projects, right, the conversation is pretty easy, right? But ultimately, they win. Whew. Any questions? So if you want to get in contact with me, you can scan the QR code. This will get you to a landing page for me. My email is there. I'm on all the social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, not really Facebook, YouTube, all of those. So you can scan that and you can get a hold of me if you want to just ask me more questions or how we can get more information about quality improvement projects. I would like to have your paper, honestly, because I do want to see what projects you guys came up with. Okay, if you need to take a picture of that so you remember, do it. But I would love to see what you guys would love to see in the future. Okay, so if you don't mind sharing that or sending that up front, I will take that. Okay. Go over there. Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
have any barriers with PT?
No.
They jumped on board right away?
There were more barriers with our staff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If I have 6 vents, how am I going to like stabilize this ET tube and then start walking on
people, first thing comes up is going to be, was there for a physical therapist, for a nurse?
It does.
And we really have all this work
Sure.
to do. This is additional. Do we have the resources to do that?
So then the question is, with respiratory therapy, I can speak to respiratory therapy, right? Because that's the area that we both know, right?
Did you head the project, or was it a team?
It was a collaborative. So we took the director of PT, we took the nurse with the hair, the two-tone hair, and we had our team manager that went. So they went to.
Medical director was heavily champion.
Oh, absolutely.
Big champion.
Absolutely. Our medical director. You've got to have that buy-in from the medical director because they're the ones that are going to lead this.
There's got to be the champion of it to make it happen.
Hey, it's like absolutely. So it's like, hey, doc, just heard about this thing. I think it's really something that we can do.
We had a doctor ask about it, and he's just talking simple. They come in and move the limbs and
Yes.
move the feet and all this.
Yes.
And right away, I saw the reaction of the PT, which was, but our codes don't fit into that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way.
I can't charge for that.
Or the indications are not for physical therapy. Just you need somebody else. And that was
so there is an indication there because there's muscle wasting for every hour that you're immobile, you lose muscle.
Yeah, and what this doctor was asking just that, just at least move the limbs and all that.
Yes.
What we, very far from, and I've read about this before about
their early mobility.
Wait, what kind of vent did you have on there?
So we use a transport vent.
Can you do it with a parapack?
Probably.
That's a pressure ventilator.
Yeah.
What were you using, volume?
Yeah, we were using volume. We just put them on the same settings that they were on before.
Okay.
So we had Hamilton. Hamilton was our main vent in the ICU, and it was also our transport vent.
Did you have like a criteria that they could get up and I get up? Like, in other words,
So that was on physical therapy. So physical therapy would evaluate them for levels of strength. So they would start out with the range of motion, right? We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do all those things. Then it moved into, okay, now we're going to dangle on the side of the bed. Then it moved into, we're going to take steps. We're going to stand up.
Did you ever have anybody crash on you? Like, you were actually
so what we had was a modified wheelchair. You saw the one that she had? We had that. So
where'd you get that from?
on the back side of it, I think it was Hillrom.
Oh, really?
Yeah. On the back side of it, they could say, like, let us know that they're tired or whatever. And it had a seat. So it would sit up like this, and it would sit down, and they could sit. And if they were that tired, then we would wheel them back too.
And you could actually wheel them almost like a wheelchair.
Yep.
That back, right?
Yep.
I didn't see that part of it.
No, we didn't have that recorded.
How that works. That's good.
Yeah. So we
what
had.
What that called? Was it custom built?
It wasn't custom. It wasn't custom, but it was definitely something that we ordered from Hillrom. I'm pretty sure it's Hillrom. But
I'll to you to see if I can get some info on that.
Absolutely.
Even though we're far away from walking, I just want to, like the same range of motion.
That's it. It starts there.
Yeah.
It starts there, and then it builds out. And there's tons of studies on.
Mm-hmm. And it was going great, but then we switched doctors, and these other doctors were more conservative as far as getting people off.
Sure.
We went to the vacations every day.
So,
no. Or we're saying this patient can be extubated, and they said, oh, no, let's wait another day just to wait.
So at that, you can look at your average vent dates, right? And you got to rule out COVID. COVID is going to be that 2-year period where our numbers are insane.
Yeah.
Just take that out of it, right? But look at your average vent days pre these docs,
mm-hmm.
right? And then look at it post these docs. One of the things that I wanted to do with our study, and we didn't really study it, but one of the things that I wanted to do with our project was I wanted to break it down by physician. We had 3 different physicians. Dr. Catalawson was our medical director. He was one, and he was one of those aggressive and let's push him. We had 2 kind of more old school docs that were a little bit more conservative, and I wanted to compare this doc to that doc, and their patients' average vent days, and do it that way.
Were you able to pull that or not?
I would have to there would need to be like 3 of me to do that, right? Just to correlate
There's
and
no
separate
automated, like I can draw from here. Boom, boom.
So the system that we used to pull that information did not have which doc was.
Oh, okay.
So the charting system that we pulled that information from did not have who was your doctor, your pulmonologist.
What do you have, Epic or what?
So we used
Not Meditech.
it wasn't Meditech. It was MediLinks.
Oh, okay.
We went to MediLinks. So MediLinks, we had that from like 2010 until 2017, 2018. And then we went to Cerner. And Cerner, I was still able to pull my reports that I wanted. I would have had to have dug a little bit more to get my providers. But it was doable. It just would have taken more reporting power.
All right, well, great presentation, man.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you came through. Thank you. Quitting time almost? Almost quitting time?